Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Mrs. Happy Catholic, and today my guest is Clelia, my friend from the East Coast, and this is her first time on. We're so excited to have her. Hi, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Awesome. Well, I've been really looking forward to this. It's going to be a great conversation, and I know you've been taking copious notes. So for everyone, you don't know how much preparation has gone into this on her end. She has been working hard already. So it's going to be great. So Clelia grew up in St. Mary's, Kansas, correct?
Yes.
On the SSPX side or the fraternity side?
SSPX. So my parents moved there about 3 months before I was born. So I just my whole life until this past year, I lived in St. Mary's or the nearby areas. Once I was like later teens and I moved out, I was still in the area, but grew up in St. Mary's. Went to the academy there, the SSPX Academy, for first grade through 12th grade, and then I did 2 years at their college. And then I worked in the town, until I got married. So that's 24 years. Yeah.
Wow, 24 years. Okay, cool. And so where in your family lineup do you fall of like age?
Number 3 out of 10. Yeah, he grew up down the street and like 10 minutes away. No idea it existed until, June. I was a senior and he was a junior.
Okay.
And yeah, I think the first time I ever even knew he existed was when he was on the basketball team.
Oh.
But yeah, so we knew of each other just because he worked at the pharmacy in town and stuff. But yeah, before that, it was no idea what the fraternity was. I mean, I did know a little bit about what the fraternity was, just this thing that existed and that you weren't allowed to go to. And one of our babysitters went there. So
one of your babysitters?
Yes.
Oh, man.
And we weren't allowed to go to her wedding when she got married, but we could go to the reception. So that was my limited knowledge. I do vaguely have this memory from when I was young, and there was a family friend over, and they were talking. He was talking about how his wife won't go to SSPX, but so he lets her go there. And I was just like, it was one of those things where you're a kid, so you're like, whatever. But yeah. There was, looking back, there were little things like that you're just, but you're a kid, so you don't know and you don't care.
Right.
But yeah, I mean,
like childhood or teenage, experiences that stand out that you would want to share that kind of led up to you deciding to look at things differently later on?
So, I mean, I had a happy childhood. I mean, we played outside all the time. I had lots of siblings to play with, lots of neighbors. We played like a lot of Lord of the Rings, and like we read some book about like leaving Warsaw. We played that game a lot. But yeah, it was normal childhood. There were some things that happened like in the school where, looking back now, I'm like, your teachers weren't always the best fit for taking care of kids, I think. But childhood was happy-ish. We made our confirmations really young, which, looking back, I was not prepared. I think I was 8. And then teenage years were more rough because there's not a lot of space for just emotionally maturing, or also just individually growing as a person, because there was a lot of suppression of individuality. Like in the academy, it was you all wear the same uniforms, and you're not allowed to, no nail polish, no makeup, wear your hair pulled back away from your face so that you're all on the same level, which it's funny because they didn't treat us the same at all. And but yeah, teenage years were harder. Lots of really weird rules looking back. Like I did stand out more because I did wear makeup outside of school, and my parents did let me fraternize with boys. So those are things that, like, I don't know. It was just a very weird situation looking back. I mean, it's hard for every teenager anywhere, but I think I wouldn't redo it for anything. But there were a couple things that did, I think, plant seeds to make me open to leaving. There's always the weird things that you're like, that's a weird rule. That's a weird rule. But I remember when I was 12, I think I was in 7th grade, when the motu proprio came out, regarding, I think, was it the bishops? So the excommunications were lifted, and
it's Summorum Pontificum that freed the mass, so that priests didn't have to have permission from the bishop to say the 62. That's what it was. Was that 2007?
It was. I'm pretty sure, because I remember exactly which teacher commented on it. But sister, so we had nuns teach us religion, and she said something along the lines of, "See, we were right all along, and we're not excommunicated."
I'm still here.
Okay. And then I heard adults in my life, like, like people who hang out with your parents and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Also saying the same thing, like, we were right all along, where we were never excommunicated, which I remember being a little bit alarmed, because in the year before that, we had learned about the Protestant Reformation and how excommunication is like the biggest deal. And so I was a little bit like, oh, we were excommunicated? Like, you're 12 and your mom has a baby and you don't want to make a big deal about it. And so we just forget about it eventually. But I was 12 when that happened. And then as I was a teenager, my mom grew up in the Novus Ordo. And so she wasn't as a firm believer in all of the rules they gave us as some people were. But so she would randomly say things like, it's not a sin to wear pants. You can wear pants. Or like, you can have a job where you can wear pants. You can have, like, you don't have to, like, our options were get married or become a nun. And she said, it's okay if you don't get married right away. It's okay if you don't have a vocation. Like it's okay to just be a person, and God will, give you your vocation, and it won't necessarily be a mother or a nun. But she would just, say things like that. And she, I remember her saying it's not a sin to go to the Novus Ordo. And because she would tell us stories like growing up and everything. We were like a little confused, and she'd be like, you can go to the Novus Ordo. It's okay. Because they always taught us it was a mortal sin to attend.
Right.
So like participate and receive communion and all that, you were sinning. So my mom was critical of things. Those things definitely help plant seeds. And I think one of the final things that did open my mind a lot more to realizing like I can go to church somewhere else was I was actually first-year college student, and I was in the college play. The director for the play was someone who I had had as a teacher in high school, and very knowledgeable, smart man, and made a comment. So there was fun little drama story. There was somebody from St. Mary's was getting married to somebody from the fraternity. So that was always a big deal when an SSPX person married a fraternity person. And the wedding was in Maple Hill at the fraternity church. And anytime that there was one of these weddings and at the fraternity, the SSPX family members would go, but nobody would participate. So you have the entire side of the church sitting down during communion. And So that always confused me a little bit. But you don't understand any of that.
Right.
At that age. And we were taught about hierarchy, but I don't even think I knew we had a bishop of the diocese. I don't even think I knew we were in a diocese growing up. When I got married, was getting married that morning, we were at our read through for the play, and he came in and was like, oh my goodness, there's all this drama. And he's like, there's someone's getting married at the fraternity, which is, Catholic. And I was like, kind of like taken aback, like, oh my gosh, someone said they're Catholic. Because we always got sermons, like, from the pulpit, the priest just, this is why you can't go, we don't go there, just bashing them because they're, modernists and they've compromised. And we're actually taught in senior year in high school for about 3/4 of the year, we're taught about Vatican II and how you can't go to the fraternity or the Novus Ordo. So I think I was just a little taken aback, like, oh, someone said like, that's okay. So, and it's like someone whose opinion I did respect. So I think that was one of the seeds. That and Andrew when I met Andrew and his parents, I was like, oh, his parents go there and they seem like they're smart people. So there must not really be an issue with it, but I didn't know any of the particulars, and I didn't have a reason to actually go there and not go to SSPX. Aside from SSPX was always, I had issues with some things with them.
Right.
But I guess this is leaving my teenage years. After I graduated, I worked at a company in town where everybody worked. And, they made you wear skirts there too, which is, it's funny that they put that demand on people who were not from there. But, but so we started dating when I was, I'm trying to think. We dated for a little bit in 2017, and then we stopped for a while, and then we started again in 2018, and we were definitely more ready that time around. But from the get-go, we were very close friends at that point, and he's like, if we were doing this, then we're going to get married, and I don't want my kids going to the academy, and I don't really want to raise them in St. Mary's.
Ooh.
And at that point, I was like, okay, I am open to that, but I was like, I don't know how that's going to happen, because I was more open to the fraternity. And it's okay to go to them, because I had other friends too who went to the fraternity at that point. But I just was like, my entire family is SSPX. All my friends, most of my friends are SSPX. I was a little like, okay, I'm open to this, but So yeah, so it was, he would come to mass with me to the SSPX while I was getting used to the idea of the fraternity. And neither of us, he knew more than me, obviously, about their position. But we still didn't know how church matters worked, theology, and all of that.
Right.
We both thought they were weird, but we were like, they have valid sacraments, so we can go, and it will make families happy. So one day he was like, here, I printed out this article. It was written. He was like, it's a little outdated in the sense of that it didn't have the recent Year of Mercy updates.
Yeah.
Pope Francis regarding
faculties and stuff.
Regarding faculties for confessions and to do marriages in dioceses where the bishop said they could do marriages. But he printed out the article, and I was a little hesitant to read that too, because I was like, this is going to make me change my mind. But I was like, I do have to read it, because we have to move forward at some point, and it can't just be me one day I'll find out. So so I started reading it. I didn't even read the whole thing. I think I got a couple pages in, and I was got to the part where they talked about the consecration of the bishops, the 4 bishops. And growing up, we were always told Rome was never going to give us a bishop, and we had to disobey. So Rome was refusing to do this. It was necessary to keep the faith going, so we had to disobey. And in the paper, I was like, wait, Rome was going to give us a bishop?
Uh-oh.
On August 15th, which is funny, August 15th is my birthday. But I was like, Rome was going to give us a bishop on August 15th. And he said, no, I'm going to do it in June. And I was like, that's a month. That's not like he's going to die in a month.
Right.
I think that was one of those, wait, they lied to me? What else did they lie to me about? So
yeah,
that was a big one. And I was like, so they lied to us. And he was like, let's talk about some other things regarding them. And so we talked about a little bit about faculties. And he was like, they can do marriages and confessions now. The diocese where we were, they did have permission to do marriages, which in hindsight, looking back, we did get a random sermon after they'd gotten permission saying how now you can't go across the street to the diocesan chapel and get an older anymore because you can do marriages. So, and I was very weirded out by that, but in hindsight, I'm like, okay, that's what that was about. But so that's when I learned they had received some faculties, and we talked a little bit about the splinter groups, and I was like, that makes a lot of sense. when you break off, you're just going to get more break-offs because there's so many break-offs of the SSPX.
Right.
I do have a funny story about resistance groups. I don't have to tell it, but
oh yes, please do.
So there was a resistance group they would meet. They still do. They meet. I don't know where they meet now. Maybe it's Rossville, but they were meeting in Emmett, which is about 10 minutes north of town. And one of their people would hang out on Main Street with a sign that said the SSPX is excommunicated. Something to that effect. They had this Bible quotes and all of that. And one time we were driving by them, and I told Andrew that it's like, yeah, growing up they said we were never actually excommunicated because Rome never declared it. And he was like, I have some letters to show you. So
no,
that was a fun learning experience of, oh wait, that did happen.
No.
But so at that point I was like, okay. He was like, you do have to come sometime. So we're just going to go to the fraternity for Mass.
Mm.
And that was actually a really big mental step.
Yeah.
And actually physically doing it was a lot harder than I thought it would be. He did have to be like, it's the exact same thing. It's the exact same Mass. It's the exact same sacraments, everything that they do in St. Mary's, it looks exactly the same in Maple Hill.
Yes.
And so I was like, okay. And he did explain a little bit we're just under the bishop. That's the only difference between St. Mary's and the fraternities. Is the fraternities under the bishop. And we went to Sunday Mass together. I was very nervous for a couple of reasons. One was the whole, I'm doing something that I've been told my whole life don't do. So doing that felt wrong. And also I was extremely worried that someone was going to see me and tell my parents or family members, just because small area, everybody talks. And they wouldn't even have been done with doing it maliciously. It would have been like, oh, hey, saw your daughter at church.
Right.
But I'm in trouble if I get caught out, So I would just tell myself it's okay to go. It's okay to go. And I would just the whole ride there. And I was just like, okay, just go in and do it. And everything went fine. And after that we alternated where we would go to church, which it worked for us, but in hindsight, we should have just picked one and gone. But one Sunday we would go to the fraternity, and the next Sunday we would go to SSPX. Mostly because the Sundays that we went to the SSPX, we would be going to my parents' house after Mass. And growing up, we always got asked, oh, who said your Mass? What was the sermon about? Yada, yada. So I was like, I can't lie. So we have to go to the SSPX so I can be honest, oh, this priest said our Mass, and
Oh, yeah, right.
But I didn't really tell. I don't think I told anyone, except for one of my friends who went to both as well. She'd grown up fraternity, went to the SSPX. And
it's so interesting to me what you're saying about the externals are the same, but the substance is different. That you're walking into this different church and you're trying to be open to this experience, but your being is this is wrong. But you're having to kind of calm yourself down, talk yourself through it. But it's it's just such a hard time of life anyway, because you're starting to leave your childhood where you've been told everything and just done what you were told. And now you're well, maybe that was wrong. And that's scary. And you have to make decisions that are different, but your conscience is leading you and you're trying to, assist with the formation of your conscience too, and judge things. And it's even you're doing something that your parents haven't done. Your mom, at least kind of told you that, it's not all bad. So she wasn't really feeding into that fear from what you're telling me.
Yeah, but it's one thing to say it and it's another thing to do it.
Yeah,
that's
true.
So I could sit there all day and be like, oh yeah, you can go to the fraternity, but was I going to do it? No. The same thing with the Novus Ordo. I mean, eventually we'll get to this, but I was in a place where it's yeah, you can go if you want to, and I was okay with going at that point, but I was never going to go. it was something that you said, like, the church allows it, so I'll say it's okay. But I will never physically walk into a church and go to mass. So yeah, I think eventually, I think at one point my sister did tell me that someone had told her, she ran to some of the grocery store and they were like, hey, saw your sister at mass. And she was like, don't compromise, all like that whole spiel. I think I just sat there because I didn't know what to say, because I had never understood actually the whole, you're compromising your faith. Like, I was like, it's mass. How am I compromising my faith by going to mass? So that I had never fully understood. So I think that did like help a little bit, that their explanation was always very like, you're compromising, and it's a sin to compromise. So there was also a really weird like responsibility put on the women. I remember them telling us, if the woman compromises, the man will follow. So basically, if you were in a relationship and you were dating someone, you had to bring them into the SSPX. If they were not part of the SSPX, you couldn't go to their church if they were Catholic, because you would be like letting them think that it was okay for them to do that. I don't even know. It was very,
I had a fraternity priest tell me something like that one time, like, the woman is the moral compass of society, and as the woman goes, so everyone else will go. And it's like, it sounds flattering when they say that, but then you're like, wait a second, that's like a really big burden to put on me, because then it's like, you better do everything right, because if it goes wrong, it's all your fault. And it's like, excuse me, but that same priest is also the one that explained that with the original sin, Eve's sin was for herself, but Adam's sin was for all mankind. So it's like, oh, well, now it doesn't sound like you're saying the same thing. Yeah, interesting, huh?
Yeah, so that's something I was never really sold on, but it was just, I had never done anything but go to the SSPX. So going somewhere else, especially when you've been told don't go, that was very big. Yeah, I got really comfortable doing, going to the fraternity, go to confession there sometimes. And then after we were engaged, I went to my first Novus Ordo mass. So that was very, that was like the mental battle that I did like all day long. So Andrew was doing his first Fridays and first Saturdays, and he had missed the mass in Maple Hill to go to his Saturday morning mass. And he was just going to go to Manhattan to the church he went to in college, just the St. Isidore's, which is the on the just off the college campus. But he was going to go to that, and he said, "You don't have to come with me, but you are you're welcome to." I had accepted it was okay, but like I said before, I wasn't going to go to one myself. And I was definitely a lot more afraid of going to a Novus Ordo than I was of going to the fraternity originally. But my gut was like, he's your fiance, go to mass with him. So I went. I made sure, I wore a skirt and a veil, and I sat in the back so I could switch lines in case there was, Eucharistic minister. And it was one of those things where I recognized all of the prayers, and I was a little taken aback, like, this is literally the English side of my missal, but I couldn't say, certain responses you can say out loud, like, and with your spirit, all of that. But Gloria, I was like, I don't know this in English. The Creed, I was like, I don't know this in English. It was just one of those, it was a very awkward experience, because I was like, I felt very out of place, and I was like, I can't even like participate, because even if I wanted to, because I don't know any of this. I mean, I did the basic structure and all of that, but the prayers, not enough to recite them and to pray with other people. I think I was a little relieved when we got to Our Father, and I was like, I know this one.
Yay!
Yeah. So I think, after that, we left, and he was like, how was it? And I was just like, I was very emotional. I was just, I think I just cried for like a couple minutes. I was like, I'm fine. I made some excuse like, oh, the music was really pretty, and that's why I'm crying. But it was definitely like just all the anxiety and nerves just like culminated in like, okay, I did it, and it was okay. And it was just, I was very relieved when we got out. I was like, okay, I think it's going to need to be a while before I go to another one. But I was like, I can't believe I just did something that is technically, I was told was a sin. But I also was at the same time like, how was that a sin? Like, I think we had a really great sermon. It was on Father Capon. Who they really like in St. Mary's, actually. But yeah, so it was one of those things where it was kind of like I did something I was always told not to do, and it was okay, and it wasn't bad. It was actually like good in a sense, but it took me a long time to process that. But after that, we planned to pick the wedding date. We were going to get married in the SSPX because his family was okay with going since they had permissions to do marriages, and my family was not going to go, or it was going to be more dramatic if I got married in Maple Hill, just between bridal party, family, all of that.
Yeah. Did all your friends at that point know that you were like one foot in both, or kind of more like on your way out?
Well, it's interesting because I think, like, looking back, God definitely sets you up for stuff. And two of my closest friends had moved away. So there was no like, they know where I am and what I'm doing. And like, it was just, and also it's something weird, but trads don't really talk about God or, all of that stuff. It's just kind of like this given, like not the way that I would like to talk about God and Jesus and relate all of that. It's just, go to church is something you do. So there was that. And then I had my two roommates. One of them didn't really know a lot about church matters and stuff. And then the other one she was okay with the fraternity. So it was one of those things where I didn't really have to talk about it to anyone. I don't remember if I told my oldest sister. My oldest sister and I are pretty close. I don't remember if I had told her at that point. I don't remember how close we were. Because I think we mostly became very close after I got married. But
so it was kind of a mix.
I did, honestly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I don't think I told people we were going to fraternity. Okay. But our plan was just get married in the SSPX, and then we're going to be living in Kansas City, and we can just go to the Institute of Christ the King and be done, with SSPX. So we, we took their marriage classes, which were really sad. They only require you to take 3. They did tell us the diocese would like us to do 6 classes, and there was like one on finance and economics. I don't remember. I know the diocese recommends the intro class to NFP. I don't remember the other ones they said that they were advised to give us, but the only ones that they said they were going to give us were the sacrament of marriage, raising children, and the marital debt. So, so the sacrament of marriage was nothing that I hadn't learned in catechism class from Baltimore Catechism. It was just, what's a sacrament? Apply that to marriage. Here's your matter form. You get the graces to be married. I don't know. They did make a very big point to tell us that, in the new catechism, they switched the ends of marriage, which you can't really. I feel like they complement each other so much you can't switch the ends of marriage. They said that, children were secondary according to the new church. But we didn't get any discussion on the sacramental nature of it and how it helps you in your marriage, or like what marriage actually is. Just all these. There's so much that I've learned since that I'm like, we could have touched on this, but it was, a 30-minute class with 10 other people, and you sit down, he talks at you, and then you leave. They ask, any questions, but like when you grow up with,
don't ask questions.
Yeah, that's the thing is like when you grow up with like we tell you everything.
No. Why would I have a question?
Yeah, so you're just like, no, I think check that out. It was literally like we got that marriage class done.
Wow.
Which is a really sad way to live, honestly. The one about having and raising children, I think, was the one that made Andrew really frustrated the most. Because it was essentially have kids, don't give them technology, which those are good things. But then they went on to say you can't homeschool them, and they actually said you'll be excommunicated if you homeschool your children. And they made a point, which worried me a little bit, but Andrew wasn't worried about it, so I didn't worry about this. They said if you're planning on homeschooling your children and you're in this class right now, then you shouldn't be here. And I was like, I'm not going to say anything because that was the plan, was homeschool at that point. And I was just like, we can ask questions. We can ask him later about that, which we did. And he was like, no, I said you'd be excommunicated. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense because even the pastor of the parish, the rector of the parish, sorry, as they call him, his family homeschools their kids and they live in town. So I was like, that doesn't line up. And I think that's just the priest saying that. So
yeah, that
was a very weird thing that they told us. And then I think they gave us 2 book recommendations to read. One of them was Dear Newlyweds, which they, I think it's Sorrow House, which is Angelus Press. They're the publisher for that. And it's, actually, I think I have it on my shelf. But it's just a compilation of sermons from the 1930s from whichever pope. Pius XII, I think.
Yes.
Gave a bunch of sermons of newlyweds. And so they said, read that and then read this one book we sell in our bookstore about sending your kids outside. And this will tell you everything you need to know about being married and having kids. The last class we did was the marital debt, which that was, you did it by yourself. So you were separate for that one. And looking back, I'm a little weirded out that I didn't have to bring like my mom or a trusted sister or something who was married to that with me, because it was just me and father. Yeah. So he just talked to me for 20 minutes, just gave like a few rules and explaining the marital debt, and then said, if you have any questions, ask in confession. And then it was like, we're done here. And then after that, in order to get married, all we had to do was actually a lot of things. My parents had to go and sign papers saying that I could get married. My husband's didn't, because they were fraternity. But my parents had to sign papers, and I asked my mom, and she said that, yes, all of the children they've asked, like my siblings have gotten married, they asked her. The last 2 of my siblings, she was like, no, my children are grown adults. I don't need to sign a thing saying they can get married. Like, this is their decision. And then they had a lot of rules regarding dress. Obviously, it's the town for what you wear.
Yes.
You get married, so you have to put your dress and your bridesmaid dresses past inspection, and they control a lot of the things. But I mean, at the end of the day, it wasn't a big thing. It was just regarding church stuff. They control that. But yeah, we got married, and actually, going back, we did our own marriage prep after that. So Andrew was like, I'm not satisfied. Like, that is not enough for the rest of our lives. Like, that was, and 3 classes, the time total was probably, I want to say, 1.5 to 2 hours total of time spent preparing, which after what you told me what your marriage classes was, I was like, wait a minute. Like, you got so much more. But we did ask around. We had some friends who were married, and Andrew talked to his dad and was like, hey, what are some good resources for us to read? So we read a lot of books. We read like 5 Love Languages, 3 to Get Married, Gregory Popchak's book. We read Love and Respect, which is some Christian doctor, but it's really good. We read a lot of books. I'm trying to remember everything we read. And then we took an NFP class in Kansas City.
Heretics.
Oh yeah, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell anybody I was taking that class. I think I told my mom, because my mom was very much like, you don't have to have a baby every year. It's okay. Like, you don't have to. It's actually better for your body if you don't, and better for your marriage if you don't, and better for your other children. So like, she was like, 1 or 2 close together is, it's understandable, but she was like, it's okay. Like, and I was, so she definitely was, she would have been like one of the people I told. I think I might have told one other person, but I don't remember for sure. But most people I knew were against it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we took an NFP class, and one of the books we read, that was my first introduction to Theology of the Body, which I was like, I wish I had this 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I wish I had given it, because the only time I had ever heard of it before, doing some of our own marriage prep, was, I remember one time I think it was a senior in high school, and the nun who taught us religion class was talking about why John Paul II was not a saint. And she was like, everybody always praises everything he wrote and did. And she was like theology of the body, we don't need the theology of the body. And after just getting a brief exposure to it, I was like, we need this. We so need this. Where was this my entire life? So yeah. I was very excited when I read it, because I was like, oh, this is just scratching the surface on this. And it changed my perspective on everything, just spiritual life, everyday life, just both of those combined. I was just, it actually made me want to have a more Catholic life and actually learn and just live it out daily, because growing up, spirituality was always boring. And, this is what spirituality looks like. And it's someone who wears drab clothes and no makeup and, you know, it was all very homely, which that's good. I really like domestic things a lot. As a mom and, homemaker now.
Yeah.
But growing up, it was I just remember being I don't know. I don't like that version. I don't like, that doesn't, holiness was not attractive. And just starting to read post Vatican II literature, I was like, oh, there's so much more. And this actually does make holiness attractive. And it was less of, I think that's when my focus or my perspective started to shift from, instead of being spiritually comfortable where I was, I'm not committing any mortal sins, so I'm in the, clear. I'm good. I don't need to progress. And that's when I was actually no, I actually want to learn more and study more. And so that was definitely a big.
That's cool.
Yeah. Did you have any questions about
that? Well, I just was correlating what you said earlier to this about in Tradland, we don't talk about God and our relationship with God or our spirituality. So it's you're presented with this model that's sort of this clean cut, but boring, not inspiring. It doesn't make you want to, race for the heights of sanctity. It doesn't really provide you any motivation. It's just this is what you should be doing, and this is what you should expect. And then there's no person in it, the person of God, or how does this manifest in your relationship with God? Can you tell me things that you've learned and seeking to know him, and you're to come to union with him, because that's what heaven is. It's with God, but it's why should we want that if we aren't taught why it's desirable, why it's exciting, why love is so dynamic, and the spiritual life is all about love, and it's a relationship with a person. If we're not going to talk about that, we talk about our other relationships, or at least we should, because we always have things to process and ways to grow in our understanding of each other. Why should that not apply to God? That's just a huge hole.
Yeah, it was definitely just something I was trying to decide if I wanted to touch on. Was growing up, it was we only learned the Baltimore Catechism, and we never went beyond. Which Baltimore Catechism is good for the younger years for formation, where it's, you just need to know these basic things, and you're a kid, you don't need to know why yet, because you can't even understand why. But then we just redid that over and over and over. I remember being in 10th grade and being oh my gosh, we're doing the sacraments for the 4th time. We've done this so many times, but we didn't learn anything new. I mean, maybe we learned a little bit more, but it was never.
I know, because I went through those books too, and it's oh, the paragraphs just got longer,
Yes, it was slightly more, but there was never, we never discussed it. It was never, it never went deeper. It was just, here's slightly more information, but it never went deeper. but yeah. So
did you guys have parish missions growing up? Like
yes.
priests coming through doing stuff? Okay, what were they preaching about? I'm just curious. 4 last things?
4 last things. Judgment, heaven, hell, or purgatory. I don't remember anymore. Death, judgment, heaven, or hell.
Yes.
Oh yeah, we had a lot of fear of hell, fear of death, fear of I remember there was a lot of okay, I don't know if this is weird, but to me it's weird. When I was 16, we had, when you're junior in high school, junior and senior year, you do a retreat, or at least we did back in the day. We did Ignatian retreats, and which I was not mature enough, I don't think, to even like look over my whole life at that point and be like, where do I need to get back on the straight way?
Yeah.
But it's just, I think, we did have parish missions though, every single year.
But yeah, if they were always kind of along the same lines, like let's harrow your soul for a few days every year.
Yes.
And remind you of the scary stuff that's waiting for you and why, but that's like the fear motivation. Okay, my experience of parish missions, I never went to a parish mission on the 4 last things that I remember. Maybe one. But the other ones, they were all about like different aspects of the spiritual life and, how to seek God and find him. And like, they would get you so like, it wasn't like a revival, but it was just so exciting. Like there was so much warmth to it. Yes. Yeah. Like, this is why you're excited. This is why you should go home and call up all your friends who haven't been to church in a long time and say, hey, do you want to come to the parish mission with me? And they actually
Laura, you can't have a good Lent unless you're very upset the prospect of I need to do more, like you need to do more penance and you need to focus on the passion, which those are good things. Yes, do the penance, but also like we would always say suffer joyfully, and it never made sense to me because they never really showed us how to be joyful. So we got married, moved to Kansas City. We would drive about 25 minutes to church on Sundays, and we would try to go a couple times during the week, and that worked until COVID, which we got married in November, and then COVID started like 5 months later, I think.
Oh.
Like I think it was March was when he started working from home. But it's funny. So we would drive 25 minutes for Latin Mass. And we would go to confession like 2 minutes away at the church down the street. So it's, in hindsight, it's so funny that I think Andrew went a couple times to that church if he had to like travel for work or something and, couldn't make the Mass 25 minutes away. But it's just, it's funny that was like a way that we were like, yeah, it's okay to like, instead of just,
you're like sacramental scavengers. Like,
yes. I love it. Sacramental scavengers. I'm going to start applying that to people. But it's something I did notice when we were going to the Institute of Christ the King was a lot of the things that I didn't like about St. Mary's were there too. Just the whole, like people's attitudes, just judging other people, way everybody dressed. Like someone one time told these girls, they were probably traveling and they were going up to communion. They were in shorts and t-shirts, and some lady stopped them and told them they couldn't go to communion. And I was like in my pew, like, do I intervene or do I didn't know what to do. I'd never been in that position before, but that's what you do. That's what trads do is they would do it in St. Mary's too. Was if they see someone going into Mass, they'd be like, you're immodest. You shouldn't go in there. Instead of being like, hi, welcome. Are you new here? So
yeah,
that was something that I noticed too. But yeah, once COVID hit, we were home a lot for church. It's such a weird time, like,
yeah,
we're like, we're going to try to, stay engaged as much as possible when you have, live streaming masses. And like, we would like still be like, okay, we're going to pray along and get our missals out and all of that. But it was just weird. And we also were like, we'd only watch a TLM mass. We were very into TLM at the time. TLM mass, that's so redundant. We watched Latin masses, traditional Latin mass. But we didn't know anything about Vatican II. And we were just like, you can go to Novus Ordo, but like TLM is the way to go. We were definitely on that bandwagon. And because I think it was shortly after that the Mass of the Ages the first one came out. But during COVID, we drove back to St. Mary to Maple Hill a lot because they had outdoor masses. So we would drive back Friday afternoon, stay the weekend, go to church there, which I really liked compared to sitting at home on my couch.
That was weird.
Yeah, and that's when all of like the SSPX abuse allegations came out, which made me want to stay away from the SSPX even more. So I was like, I can just go to Maple Hill and just not tell people I'm in nearby. And so, then in August that summer, I was about 7-8 months pregnant. We bought a house in Maple Hill, moved back to the area. And at first I loved it. There was a girl I knew growing up who lived close by. And we both were like, isn't it nice where we, they mentioned visiting the bishop and like, we're part of the church now. And just like, there's like small things, but it was nice that I had someone who had grown up similar to me, who was also now going to the fraternity. And she lived close by and we could go on walks with our babies together and such. At that time, too, because of the Mass of the Ages documentary, there was a big influx of people whose churches were closed during COVID moving in to Maple Hill. Because one, for the Latin Mass, and two, for everybody was like the community, because they're the only ones with a school, the only fraternity church with a school. So there was a big influx of people, and I tried making friends with people, and it was hard because there were a lot of the things that I didn't like growing up were present. Like I would just see them going from individual persons to just everybody started dressing, talking. You could only, read these books, watch these things, dress this way. And it just, they were definitely more happy than the trads I'd grown up with, but it was just,
right.
They just shifted into this, like, that's not Catholic, that's Catholic. When it was like, no, that's not actually Catholic church teaching.
Yeah.
So it was like, these things can be good, but like they're all externals, and
right.
And those externals were what made everybody truly Catholic, and rejecting all post-conciliar things, and just away with the Novus Ordo, which I actually heard. Actually, I didn't hear someone say that. I heard someone say something similar, but it was just, I think it hit me one day when I was out shopping with a friend, and she had had gone to the Novus Ordo for a while, and then they found the Latin Mass and they started going. And I was just saying, like, I was having a conversation with someone talking about how, you do have to go to the Novus Ordo if you don't have a Latin Mass nearby. And she was like, well, and I just was like, oh no, like, just things like that would happen. And it was really hard to make friends, because I was like, I want to talk about God, and I want to talk about motherhood and like the beauty of all of that. And everything would just turn into, well, if you're really doing it right, you'll do it this way. So
it's very narrow, isn't it? It's interesting, because they think that they've got the corner on the market, but it's actually like they have to shut out all this other
stuff.
They're
isolating themselves off.
Yeah, even what they do talk about, it's like my experience of hanging out with trads, they usually don't talk about personal things. They talk about issues.
We don't talk about the ugly stuff.
Yeah, and usually a lot of negative, like critical, about the liturgy, or nearby liturgies, or things.
We talk about politics.
Yeah, politics, upsetting things, challenges, things that are going on. But it's like it's all kind of out there, and it's not really constructive close to home.
There's nothing up close and actually anything that's going to change personal lives. That's and then I feel like after that was the start of the very big shift on a lot of different levels, and what eventually led us to where we are now. So there in February of 2021, I had a miscarriage, and I think, like, the devil obviously takes advantage of you when you are vulnerable, but I think everything that I had been trained, the way I had been trained to think growing up, really kicked in. And it just, everything like the foundation I'd been given was not enough to handle it. So,
no.
but also the bad stuff that I'd been just told my whole life really just like slammed into me. So there was a lot of blame of I did something somewhere and God is punishing me for this. So it was just I just had a lot of anxiety, a lot of scruples, a lot of just like, where did I go wrong? What happened? And I started going to spiritual direction. And I remember being like, we need to, my husband was like, we should ask the fraternity, like, what are their marriage classes like? Because we, didn't really experience that. And maybe that'll give us a good start to having, we can kick off from there with spiritual direction. And so we went, and it was basically everything we'd gotten. It was better, but it wasn't as thorough as I thought it would have been. And I mean, I think that just ties in along with the afraid to talk about a lot of things because the fear of occasions of sin, when it's like, there's just,
it's like they're all thinking about it anyway.
Yes.
But why not talk about it and tell them how to think about it properly so that like disorders don't crop up?
It was just this like very like, it was the elephant in the room. Like when you're like, can we just be candid about it and have a candid adult conversation, and that doesn't happen.
Right.
It's a little frustrating. It was a lot better than what we've been used to, but I still just like was like, okay, something somewhere, I have to fix something, like and so I was stuck in that like anxiety loop of like, I go to confession, trying to research books that help me. Something that did help was the 10 Commandments of scrupulosity, but then I would start doubting, like, do I even have scruples? And like, if you have ever had scruples, you know what it's like. But so we were talking to one of the fraternity priests, and it did help. Some of the things he said did help, but then some of the other things he said did not help. And I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot do this. Like, that made it worse. So he was like, I'm going to go he's like, I'm going to go to confession at the diocesan chapel in St. Mary's, just on Main Street, and talk to him.
Mm-hmm.
So he went, and he came home, and he was like, honey, you have to go talk to this priest. Like, just very least, just go to confession. And I was like, for me, confession was always this, it was never the healing sacrament that, you think it's supposed to be. Yeah. Like, they tell you, like, God, it'll help you, free you from sin, all this stuff. But like, for me, confession was, it was like this nerve-wracking experience of like, sit there, be anxious. I'm going to get yelled at. I'm going to get, judged. I'd had some very traumatic confession experiences. Like one time the priest made me repeat my entire list of sins when I got done, because, well, I didn't hear that, so you need to repeat all of it. Just stuff like that would happen, that just, and especially going to a new priest that I'd never been to before was like, I don't know what to expect, and it's going to be terrible, and I just have to get it done with. And so yeah, I went, and that was life-changing. Like, I went in, I got into the confessional, and it was like instant calm, which I'd never felt before. It was just like, I mean, you still have a little bit of nerves where you're like, okay, it's going to come out of my voice, but it was not like my brain stopped, like doing the thing. And I was able to actually like go through my list and not be like worrying that I'm missing something the entire time. But so yeah, and it was just, I don't know, maybe this is how confession is everywhere. I mean, I've definitely had really good confessors here since we've moved, but it was like just calm, gentle. I remember coming out and being like, I actually felt God in that confessional. Like, and I had never, like, I don't think I'd ever come out of the confessional. I mean, I'd had some that were like, oh, that was actually better than what I'm used to. But that I came out and I was like, that was just so peaceful. And I have so much peace of soul. And then around that same time, there's a lot of different moving factors here. Yeah. So we accidentally started doing research into church history and like the Novus Ordo Mass. So we went to a used bookstore, and Andrew found I think it's here. Let me get it for you. Andrew found this book.
Why do Catholics do that? That's cool.
And he was like, it's like $2. I'm gonna go and look at it. I'm gonna buy it. So he bought that, and then also he was going to adoration.
Always a bad idea.
Well, it was at the diocesan chapel where it got to confession.
Oh.
So was that
not really a thing that was practiced much in trad world, adoration? Because I don't hear about that very much, other than
it is on a first Friday.
Oh.
First Fridays there's adoration. Usually they call it exposition of the Blessed Sacrament.
Oh yes.
So it's not called adoration, but I was like, wait, 24/7 adoration, what's that? But they have a little chapel. It's actually really cool. They have a little chapel, and you buzz in, and the person who's in there lets you in, and they have someone there at all times.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. But yeah, so he was going there, and he started reading. I think he read the Lamb's Supper first, and he was like, So he was reading that at the same time as the Why Do Catholics Do That? Mm-hmm. And he kept being like, you have to listen to this. You have to listen to this. And which was really good, because we were both like, this is not like, this is such a different experience, like not experience, but like
exposure, like things you hadn't done before.
Yeah, like it was just growing up, everything was bad. Protestant Mass, it's bad, it's not Catholic, all of that. And reading that was like, oh, actually, I think one of the big things was like, the early Christians did what? And wait, the sign of peace has been only was not in practice for about 300 years, and what it actually meant, and just all these things that was like, oh, wait a minute. And so we just started reading more, and this book is actually really good.
The Mass of the Early Christians.
Yeah.
Like Aquilina. Oh yeah, that's on the Trad Recovery Resources page.
I think a lot of these are.
Oh good, yes.
I have
feeding them. Feeding them to me. We'll put them on.
Yes. So but we started reading all of this, and he was like, do you want to start going to weekday Mass in St. Mary's at the diocesan chapel church, it's a church, and just to get a taste of what most Catholics around the world experience, and because this is the norm for 90% plus of Catholics, and also for our kids, we were like, none of us, like growing up, it was like you didn't go. That didn't exist. I don't even think I knew we had other Catholics in the same town until I was older. Yeah, it was just like, yeah, that's a church, but we don't go to that church. I don't even think I knew it was a Catholic church. And so I was like, it was one of those things where I was like, not that it was too fast for me, but I was like, oh man, I'm a little bit nervous about this, because I think I was like, I don't want to change things, like rock the boat, but at the same time, it was like, something has to change, because I am not in a good place, like, mentally, and obviously spiritually. I need, like, obviously that's affecting my spiritual life.
Yeah.
So so we started going to a weekday Mass, and I had actually been to one Novus Ordo Mass since the first one. So one of our friends got married, and they actually had a beautiful Mass. They had lots of singing, like the choir did a lot of Latin, and the priest did like so much good sense, and like it was very, very, very conservative and very beautiful. I was like, oh, this is actually really nice. But it was one of those like things where I was like, I still don't know the responses. And I remember feeling awkward, because there were a lot of people from St. Mary's at that wedding, and like I had to walk by them all to go to communion, and I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, but it was a really beautiful beautiful Mass. And I remember afterwards thinking, like all those people obviously think it's legit because they went, But I hadn't gone, it had been a couple years. And we went, and I was like, okay, there's not a lot of people here.
Yeah.
We're gonna do this. And I was very nervous, mostly because not because it was a Novus Ordo mass, but because it was on Main Street in St. Mary's. And I was like, park in the back. Like, that's what when we went to confession there, we would park in the back. And because we've been going to confession there for like about a couple months at that time.
Yeah.
We'd park in the back and, go in the side door. And so I was like, do the same for mass. So I just didn't want anyone to see me, or I didn't want people driving by to see and just know, I guess, just because it's silly looking back, but knowing that they don't understand where you are, and to them it's like a bad thing. I was like, I don't want to scandalize people. Yeah. Now I think I'd be more open to being like, oh yeah, you saw me going, and like, who do you want to talk about it? But back then it was like, I'm going to scandalize so many people if they see me going in. So, and I did wear a veil when I went. I don't wear a veil as much now, mostly babies. And also I still associate that with things growing up. Like, we'll get to that later, but
right.
But we did go, and I remember being like, okay, I like it. Let's do this. Let's go during the week for a while. So we would go like once a week, I think. Around that same time too was when I had started going to a Catholic therapist for just to see if it would help with scrupulosity, which it did help a lot. Before I found a therapist, I actually, this is by the same guy who wrote the book we read. We were getting ready for marriage, Gregory Popchak. But he has this book, which I didn't even need to read it all the way to realize, like, oh, I have an anxious brain. I need help. But the recent video you did with your mom reminded me a lot of this book, because he goes through like grounding yourself. Like, if you're getting stuck in that mental loop, like, oh, what are 5 things I can touch right now, and a couple things I can smell, and just all of that, which I realized, oh my gosh, I'm in a position where everything, I can't even like think of what a sin is. So learning how to just be like, no, be in the present moment. And which is something I really wanted to do. Like, I just want to be present with my daughter and not be like off in anxiety land. Going over my entire life up to that point really helped. And it got to a point where I was like, okay, now I can look up what constitutes a mortal sin, and like just basic catechism that like I had actually not forgotten, but when everything was just like, be afraid of sinning your whole life, that kind of just like took over when I was very emotionally vulnerable. So so that kind of but I had started going to a therapist, and that really helped. That, along with the spiritual direction and confession, was from just the diocesan priest, the pastor in St. Mary's. He was just amazing, and like, he would say things, and I was like, I've never even like he just put God in a whole new light for me.
Wow.
And it was, so that was very good. And then also around that time was the Logos Project had John Salza on. And Andrew knew Dom from way back when. And he reached out to him, and he was like, hey, I've been watching your stuff. And they chatted briefly about church stuff. But we started, I think, realizing like, because Dom gave him a lot of book recommendations, like, here's what you should read that will help you have a different perspective of like the church and the mass and like Christian Catholic morality and Catholicism in general. So, and we've always been, I mean, as you can tell from our marriage prep, we are both we're big readers. And at that point, I think I had pushed aside the like, I can question things and I can read post-Vatican II literature now. So we started reading more. And at the same time, though, I was just like, I didn't know which authors were okay. you know, like you're still like, you're willing, but you're also like, what if I run into a bad author or something?
Yeah, right.
But I mean, you just kind of, I'm like, okay, if I start reading it and I come into something that makes me a little qualmy, I'll put it down. But everything we started like studying up on, we were like, wow. And it just, more and more just
right.
Our understand. I think a lot of things that just, it changed a lot of my views on things. I read Rome Sweet Home. One of my friends was like, oh, you should read this if you like Scott Hahn. And I read it and I was like, oh my gosh. And I think we were at my parents' house and I mentioned it to my dad and he was like, oh yeah, I know Scott Hahn. And I was like, you've known him and I've never heard of him. Like, it was just like, I was just like, oh, it was just, I think just realizing the resources, starting to realize the resources available to us to just learn and grow. And so the first perspective I think that really changed, well, there were a couple of them changing at the same time, but my view of the SSPX changed drastically between Logos Project videos and also between just reading a couple. I'm trying to remember what we read. We've read so much. What Andrew was reading around that time. But like, my whole life, like I've said before, I always thought some things with them were weird. But like, you give yourself the caveat, like mentally, you just push that aside and be like, oh, that's just, they're wrong about that, but they're right about everything else. And then, when I found out I'd been lied to, I was like, I'll do just enough research to where I know I can go to the fraternity. So,
Yeah. Like, do I want to know any more about how bad it is?
Yeah. I was like, I don't want St. Mary's. So, yeah, sure. I'm open to the fraternity. So I'll do enough research to where I know I can go there. But I still thought, and I think we both did, that we could still go to the SSPX for marriages and funerals and stuff. But then we started reading about the Eucharist and communion, and like what that entailed. And I think the realization of like what an illicit Eucharist is really just, it still makes me so sad. Like, like we went back for a wedding and I left after the vows and I was just in the vestibule in the crying room with the baby. But like, I just remember during the consecration, like I want to weep. This, like it makes me, and I wish that I could explain to them what that means. Cause to them it's, well, we have some faculty. So we're in partial communion. And I'm like, you either are in communion or you're not in communion. And,
right.
But like realizing, I think one of our friends who's a convert, she mentioned once, the Eucharist is the whole point. And I was like, I've never heard it phrased that way. Because to me, the Eucharist growing up was like, I go to receive Holy Communion. But the actual, the idea of like, because it was always like, it's valid, so it's okay. But the idea of, like, I don't think I even understood.
Laicity.
Yeah, no, like, or like, what an illegal mass is. And just, I didn't understand the hierarchy. I mean, I'd learned, priest under bishop, under, pope, but I never understood like, hey, we actually are in a diocese and we're not under that bishop. Yeah. And therefore we cannot consecrate the Eucharist. We cannot have a mass. Like it didn't even cross my mind that you would need permission to say mass. And once it was mentioned like, oh, it's actually a sin for them to say mass, I was like, huh? And then once I learned about the Eucharist, I was like, oh, like that is sacrilegious. That is so
right.
Like,
because for anybody watching who doesn't know all this, just briefly, that because the SSPX is they're not in communion with the church at the present time, because like you said, it's either full communion or not communion. So they say not full, and it's like, therefore you're not. And every priest has been suspended by church
Moment of
law,
ordination.
and that's never been lifted ever since Lefebvre started ordaining priests against the permission of the Pope. He told him not to do it, and he started ordaining them anyway, and then he consecrated the bishops. And ever since then, every time they ordain a priest or consecrate a bishop, that it's a valid sacrament that they get, but they're automatically suspended because they are not being given faculties or jurisdiction by the church to operate, because they're doing it counter to the wishes of the church and without authority. And so when a suspended priest celebrates the Eucharist, it's a sacrilege. Like, he can actually validly confect the Eucharist. It's Jesus there, but he basically poached that from the church, and he's doing it his own will against the will of the church. So it's a sacrilege for him to do that, and then for anyone to receive communion under those circumstances is participating in his sacrilege, and it's a sacrilege for them. And that's why you want to cry, because it's terrible. And it's like they're telling everybody, this is the only place to go. This is the only way you should be getting the sacraments and, going to communion, and people are believing them. And every single time they're doing it, it's a sacrilege. If they don't know it's only a venial sin for them. But if they know, if they have some knowledge and they keep doing it, then it's a mortal sin, and those priests are in big trouble. Yeah, because they should understand that that's the situation. I mean, they know they're suspended and they operate anyway.
How do you go through that many years of seminary and not recognize, like, what I am doing is wrong? It's one of those things where it's like every priest. I remember explaining to someone recently, like, every priest, even a diocesan priest, when he gets ordained, he has to be given a mission from his bishop. Like, that has to happen, and that mission comes from, the bishop gets it from the Pope, who gets it from Christ. And that was, obviously I didn't, it makes sense now why it's not explained to us growing up, or why, they stress on so many other things other than the Eucharist. But that is one thing that I think the Novus Ordo does excellent, especially now because of the Eucharistic revival, is just everybody says, oh, people don't believe. And I'm like, I think that's just really old people, a certain age group, not really old people, like older than, I don't know, 50. Yeah. Like, it's a certain age group that doesn't believe in the real presence. And
that study that
I've never met someone who hasn't. Like,
well, that's good. That study that they did that came out saying that, only, or 30% of Catholics don't believe in the real presence. And that was a study that didn't just take in like regular attending Catholics. It took in like, my understanding is basically anybody who said they were Catholic that happened to be found to participate in the survey. It's quite a swath. So it's not, you're not really talking to people that are necessarily even practicing their faith.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, as we know, you run into people all the time that are like, I'm Catholic, but I haven't gone to church since I was a kid. And you're like,
I worked with some of those people who, when someone told me like, oh, you're such a good Catholic because you go to mass every Sunday. And I was like, oh, that makes me sad. But yeah, I think, something that Novus Ordo does really well, especially something that I hate calling it the Novus Ordo, but something the new mass does really well is the Eucharist, in the sense of the stress of the importance of it and what it is. And I mean, that ties into the whole, like, what was Vatican II trying to do?
Yeah.
And but the Eucharist, just, not that it became more accessible, but I was like, I understood it. It clicked more in how, like, communion is everything. So that ties into my change of perspective on God, relationship with God, Jesus, all of that. So my whole life, we were told, love God and have a relationship with him. And to love God entailed following the set of rules required to be Catholic and to be in the state of grace. And they say God loves you. But in my head, like, his way of loving is doling out, like, the justice. So you followed all the rules, good job, or hell. So they did mention, like, God, is all merciful, and that's why he forgives your sins. And, he is, they would always give, he's good, he's all these things, but justice was always top tier, because I think they felt they had to put it that way because the modern day church was too lovey-dovey version of God, like saying he's all merciful and he's all loving, was always portrayed as Protestant. And that Protestant mentality had taken over the church.
Like
so
instead
they
of a
needed to be
disciplinarian father, we have an indulgent father. We can't have a role.
when it's not both,
Right.
And like there's that those things did not complement each other at all. So I remember we did that same year, the same year that I had a miscarriage and went through, therapy and reading and started to go to Novus Ordo. Yeah. We did the Bible in a year with Father Mike Schmitz. And I remember him saying, God is faithful even when we aren't. Mm-hmm. And it was so foreign to me. And I was in the sense that it seemed so much more intimate than the God I'd been exposed to, or the God I'd been taught existed. Right. So I also read Story of a Soul that Lent. I'd never read it before. I remember the only person who ever really encouraged me to read it was my oldest sister and my mom. And people always talked about St. Therese and how, her little way, you must speak, the child perspective. But I remember reading her approach to God, and I was like, wow, that's really bold. But it tied in with what I was hearing on podcasts and on, Bible in a year and all of this, that's not how I was taught to think about God or talk to God, or it seemed like a better approach, but it was also very new. And and I actually learned it's not a one-way thing. It's a relationship, and he's, the God chasing you that was so foreign to me and Jesus the bridegroom. I remember being introduced to that, and it was just and that also helped me understand that's how the church and the bride of Christ and all of that it all ties in together, but just everything was starting to just click into place. Oh, cool. And that also affected my perception of the Mass. I was also studying, learning about Eucharist and who God is and what the Mass was going to be. And then that actually made me want to try to understand Vatican II. So,
cool.
So, yeah, because I was I think we were reading, here we go. We have this book I read, and then I remember reading commentary on the Song of Songs, and just
what's
the intimacy
of that one? I can't see it very well. Jesus it's Jesus the Bridegroom by Brant Peter. Ooh, Brant Peter is really good. Yeah.
So I remember that all tied in the Eucharist, body of Christ, the intimacy of that union, and the intimacy of Christ in the church, and how just the body of Christ works together. And the whole point is community and communion, and and not isolating yourself away from the rest of the church. So also all the resources I read by that time, they put Vatican II in a better light. And I think that's why it made me more curious to learn about okay, what does Vatican II actually teach versus what was I told? Because by that time too, I was really over the whole conspiracy theory thing. That was huge growing up. Yeah. Just, the whole Bugnini thing, the whole the infiltration thing and such. Yeah. That I was very much over that and over trying to understand church politics and trying to understand something that was so far removed from me and out of my control. So it was just, but the more I read about post-Vatican II and what Vatican II was trying to do, just the literature that came from it, I was like, oh, this seems so much more practical and applicable to today and to my life and to just trying to be Catholic in today's world. And because radical traditionalism does not prepare one to deal with the attractions of the modern world. We were always told it's, Vatican II, people leave the faith. And it's like, no, it's the attractions of the modern world. Most teenagers I knew growing up were still very much, they wanted to be cool. They wanted to listen to everybody listened to the popular music, watch the popular movies, dress trendy, leave their parents' house, get changed immediately into their cool clothes when they went out. It was just, everybody was like, that appeal was still there. Yeah. And no one was equipped how to deal with it. So when you do get exposed to it, it's like, oh, this is fun. This is different, And the only thing keeping you back is some rule, which you're like, it's a rule. Confession exists. So, and I think just seeing that mindset over and over and over again with young people, and it was always the, spirit of Vatican II that was blamed, and not like the world is a really pagan place and it's not Christian. So I think finding tools that helped me deal with modern day problems, that were given to us from the church, really was very helpful. And so at that point I was like, okay, let's learn more, let's study more, and let's just do one. Let's not do both Novus Ordo and Latin Mass. And I'd only experienced good in the Novus Ordo at that point. I still don't like calling it that, but it's a way to differentiate between the two.
Yeah, right. I know.
So everything we'd read on the changes they'd made a lot of sense. And then he started reading early church fathers. And one day, because we'd only been going during the week, he said, let's go on a Sunday. And just start making that switch. And we came out, and I was like, I really liked that. I loved that. I felt so much more just present at Mass than I'd ever felt in my life. And it was very, if you live near St. Mary's, go to one of Father Justin's Masses. He's amazing. But it's you hear all these things of this is what happens. And so, obviously you can go with the attitude of what bad things can I find? And if you have that attitude, you will find bad things. You can find bad things at Latin Masses, for heaven's sakes. It's just, but if you go and you look for the good, there is so much good, and just young families, and just very, very conservative liturgy. And but I had to just was like, oh, I like this, and I want to accept it, and this is the church, this is the Mass, the liturgy that, Latin Rite promulgates as the main rite, and I want to learn to love it. And I did. It wasn't hard to. Wow. And there are some things I really do love about, I had never loved going to Mass before. It was just your obligation that you do. And you try, you're like, I'm going to try really hard to, participate. And, I also has had a really hard time understanding what the Mass was before this as well. And I have been to a couple Latin Masses since, and it's really hard for me to be like, this is what's going on, and to translate that over.
Yeah.
With English Mass, it's very, I think because I've done so much research, and Andrew and I both have.
Yeah.
He does a lot more than me, but just on the early Mass, early liturgies, history of the liturgies. We've been to a Byzantine liturgy. It is very, very close to Novus Ordo liturgy. The only difference is they have their tradition of they're behind the screen, so you don't see what happens most of the time. But it's in the vernacular, which was always a huge no-no. In the vernacular, people stand to receive. You receive under both species, so not Protestant. But just these things that it was just things that we were told were bad was just, and everything bad we've been told was very quantifiable. And going there, I was like, I feel nothing but good, and I feel the Holy Ghost here. I feel God in this church. And
wow.
but there were a lot of good things that, I don't know if you want to talk about that more.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta like, you had to overcome so much, like psychologically to get yourself there. But once you're there, you're like, oh, wow. Like it wasn't what you expected, was it?
No. Oh no. They act like there's atrocities happening in like every other church. Like, and it's just, and I'm sure those do happen today, I'm sure. But those are far and few between. And I think you have to like want to find it. And I think for the most part, I have been to so many since then, so many very, very good liturgies. There's a liturgy 30 minutes away. They have the communion rails. They have the the priest is facing the people, but they have the crucifix and the candle set up between, like Pope Benedict suggested.
Right.
They don't do, lots of churches don't do Eucharistic ministers anymore. Like smaller parishes, I know bigger parishes usually do, and that's something that I did have to come to terms with. But
it's permitted. It's not abuse necessarily. I mean, they are sometimes overused, and so that. But at the same time, it's like that's above our pay grade. We don't get to make those decisions. Like we can sit there and
but there's no abuse
in the pews all we want. But it's like
there's no abuse of the body of Christ,
right?
In that sense of
right.
Everybody
by a layman, it's not. Yeah, it's permissible.
Most Eucharistic ministers I've seen are dressed very, very well, and they are very respectful, and they believe they're honestly doing something that is very, very good, and like they're helping, and they're being charitable. That's their due. That's they take. They see that as this is what I am doing for the body of Christ. But
that's one reason I was just so anxious to receive confirmation as soon as possible, because I knew that once I was confirmed, I would be able to be a Eucharistic minister. Because that was pre me being trad, but I was just stoked about it because I love the Eucharist so much. And I was just like, Father, when can I be a minister? And he was like, well, you have to be confirmed. And so I got confirmed at like 12 or 13. And so by 13 or 14, they were actually letting me do it. But I was super into it. And I was just like, I want to be a sacristan. I want to know all the stuff. And it was like, not a lot of people from my confirmation class were doing it, but the ones that were like, they were really into it too. And one of them just got ordained a few weeks ago, a priest.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was like, we weren't doing it just like, oh yeah, fine, I might as well do this and I don't care about it. It was
like this is something fun I can do. It's like, I want to bring Christ to other people. And that's the way to do that.
Yeah. And it was like, I mean, I wasn't thinking like that it was irreverent somehow, because I hadn't even encountered that concept yet. Eventually I did. Then it was like, I started veiling, and then I was like, well, that's kind of weird that I'm like going up to the sanctuary to get a ciborium so I can go down and distribute the communion. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't really fit. And then I'm like, oh, women shouldn't be in the sanctuary, because at that time they still weren't technically permitted to be in the sanctuary. Oh. And now that is, because, readers are allowed, women Eucharistic ministers, girl altar servers, like it's permitted. And it used to not be, until very recently. So when it was happening, it was like, women could be ministers, but they weren't supposed to like enter the actual sacred space. And then when you're veiling, you're like, this just looks weird. So I think I'm not going to do that. So I stopped. I mean, I stopped doing that, but I was like, yeah, I mean, it was, it's so funny, like what a different world it is, No,
it's a very different world. For me, veiling is definitely and I do want to like eventually touch back on the good things that I was sort of thinking, but for me, veiling is still okay. So when I go to a Latin mass, I cannot do a Latin low mass. I feel like I'm just sitting in the pew watching, like you can't hear anything. It's just movements, and then like, oh, consecration is coming. So it's a lot harder to participate. Yeah. In the sense of I don't feel like I'm actually present at mass, and half the people are praying rosaries, which that's a different story. But I feel like it's really, really hard for me to, especially with small children, to attend low mass. But high mass, I still do like a high mass in Latin, but it's very hard because it does draw me right back into the mindset growing up. Like it's really hard to keep the same spiritual, like the approach to God and the church that I have now when I go to a Latin mass. And I associate veiling partially with that, and partially like when I go into church to mass and I'm wearing a veil and like maybe two other people are, I feel like I'm just like, hey, look at me. And to me, I associate it because I had that mindset so much growing up of like, I'm the better because I veil. And I'm trying to shed that. And I want to be able to veil because I see it as a good thing to do and not as I'm better. So I'm like, I'm still working on that. And I do think it's a beautiful thing, but it's also really impractical with kids.
I'm a part-time veil wearer now. When I remember to grab one and when I can actually keep it on, because it's just like I'm not gonna be.
We're just gonna bring back hats. Bring back hats.
Yeah,
my solution. That's my solution. Although veils usually smell like beautiful from the incense, but it's very hard for me to wear a veil and not feel like I'm trying to be better than everybody else. But there were lots of things that I just, like I said before, like first time I went to a Novus or Mass, I was like, I don't know this prayer. I don't, like I am a Catholic. I should be able to say the Nicene Creed, not the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed out loud at Mass. Like I should be able to know it. And I had read it 1,000 times on the English side of my missal.
Yeah.
But I had never said it out loud. And I think just the impact of praying out loud in your native language with other people was very, very big for me. It's funny. I think you mentioned on the phone once about the Good Friday liturgy or Palm Sunday when you sing the Passion and the diocesan parish. It's in English. This was my first year experiencing that, and I was like, I can't say that, but like it was so like, but that's it was very impactful when it hit home harder, I think.
Right.
Just growing up, everything was Easter, Good Friday liturgy, all of that was very solemn. They made a big deal about that, but it was always like, we're gonna go and they're gonna like. I love the singing of the Passion in Latin, I really do, but hearing it in English was definitely like, oh, and being part of the people who respond, say crucify him. I was like, oh, that. And I think another time that it really stood out for me was the psalm. The response was, "Here I am, Lord, I have come to do your will." And I remember being in church, and I'm like 8 months pregnant, and I was like, I've never said that out loud before. Like I don't even think I've prayed that internally, like in private prayer. That's cool. Here I am, I've come to do. It was always like, help me to do your will. I want to do your will. But actually saying praying the psalm, here I am, Lord, I have come to do your will. I was like that. I mean, there's a reason confession is verbal. There's like, it's so much more, what's the word? I don't know what word I'm looking for. I don't know. Maybe it's something you just have to experience, of just going to church and praying the prayers out loud with other people.
Like transformative, maybe?
Maybe that works.
I mean, you've prayed the rosary, like, we pray the rosary and like as a family or a church or whatever, like, but I feel like you get the rosary is great, but it's kind of limited. Like it's only so much exposure.
It's limited. And it's mostly
liturgy is the pinnacle of our Christian life. It's like everything happens there.
The Eucharist, the celebration of the Eucharist. People are gonna say you sound Protestant.
Celebrate good times. Not like that. No.
No, but or scandalize people.
I'm not helping. No.
So no, but like the actual like we are here. Like growing up, they're like it's Calvary. It's Calvary. I remember reading Fulton Sheen and being like, that's why it's Calvary, because the body and the blood are consecrated and they're separated, and that's what death is. And I was like, but it's like God on the altar. The theology, beautiful stuff, but
so cool.
But I remember it's just like I don't even think I understood like why growing up they always said it's Calvary, Mass is Calvary, but I also once I understood also the covenant aspect of it, that was very big, and just how it's new covenant, and I just it's talked about in Trad-land, but not to the point of that it is in. They don't talk about the Eucharist as this is the Eucharist. This is the. It's you learn what the sacrament of the Eucharist is, but then it's just Holy Communion after that, or it's the consecration. So now it's the body and blood of our God on the altar. I realized so going to Novus Ordo, or just going to a diocesan parish, even Latin masses at diocesan parishes I've been to, which there's one nearby. It's a bit of a hike, but we've gone before, and it's where our second daughter was baptized. But the people were so much happier. Like they actually, you can see they love God just by them being like, "Hi, how are you?" and "Welcome," and just everybody is just so much everybody loves God so much more, and people are like, "Hey, let's talk about." Are very openly talking about scripture and God in their lives, and faith, living out the faith every day. So many people I know, and just in the parish in town, do liturgical living, and everybody just. One of my friends said to me recently, we have to be Simon the Serene to one another and help carry our crosses. I was like, I have never, none of my friends have ever said anything remotely like that. It was like, oh, that's sorry you're going through a tough time. But it was just, everything correlates to the faith for these people. And I think I was blown away because I was like, I'm over here judging someone because you wore that to church, or I saw you receiving the hand, or you went, just for things to them that would be so shocking that someone would say to them that's wrong, that I had grown up that's wrong and I'm better than you because I know better than that. And and I think there was just, and I still catch myself sometimes, but I think I was shocked because I thought I was so much better because I went to Latin Mass my whole life.
Well, you can't really be
impressed
that, because what I'm realizing listening to you talk, that this is probably not going to come out quite well because I haven't really thought of it like this, but traditionalism is like a denomination based on negatives and what is wrong, and we have to compensate for that. We have to remind, our religion is based on reminding everybody of what the best thing is and what they're not emphasizing enough. We got to fill in the holes. So they're trying to do that to the point where they only emphasize where they feel the rest of the church is lacking. And then everybody else that grows up in that environment is starving. And you feel like you have to be judging because the whole thing is based on judgment, because the church wasn't good enough without traditionalists. They have to come along and show, keep everything in balance. And hey, everybody, remember, God is a God of justice. There is such a thing as mortal sin. We need to be in fear of hell. And we need to do these, these things are good. And the Eucharist is the real
fear of the devil, fear of hell.
Yes. They're all good things in themselves, but it's so unbalanced. It's weird. And so it's not sustainable and it's not complete. And so that's why anything.
The balance, it's unbalanced. That was one thing. I remember we were talking to a different priest friend that we know before we moved, just saying goodbye before we moved. And I remember saying that I was like, I want to try and find the balance. Because I was like, obviously, we all know there's, very progressive, liberal-leaning Catholics out there. We are reminded of them daily by every trad podcaster on the planet. But but there's, the other extreme is not the answer. And and I was just like, there has to be a balance. There has to be a balance. And and he said something to the point of well, God is in the center. Virtue is in the center. All these things are in the center. And I was like, I can't believe that I didn't even recognize that. But I think growing up, it was, yes, you have to be the best. There was no, you tried your best, good job. It was that you must be the best. You want to be liked by your teachers and your peers, you must be the best. You are SSPX, therefore you are the best. There was no there's no wiggle room for people who are trying and failing as persons. At least that's how it felt. That's how I felt. And so I think just being exposed to Catholics who just say things like it's okay to be ordinary. It's okay to have an ordinary life. Just since we started going to the Novus Ordo, and I was like, the way forward is not, running off to another parish, running off to Latin Mass only parish, and just studying like what the liturgy should be and could be. And there are people out there who think it can't be fixed, but it's from the ground up. But it's we're infiltrating our parish, as we like to say. No, it's one of those things where you meet people all the time who want change for the better in their parishes. They want more beautiful liturgies, and I think some people do run off to Latin Mass parishes because they're like, I like it better because it's more beautiful. And I'm like, I get that, but if you invest in your parish, so many young priests are very open to making good changes, to be, obviously, things got off to a really rocky start after Vatican II. But so many young priests are open to, and even older priests. And if your priest isn't, pray for him, pray that he does become more open to changes. But it's our church in town. We have a beautiful choir. We have a really, 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 they treat their solemn feasts very well. They're very, very solemn. But this book, I want everybody to read. This is just everybody go home and read. No, Laura, if you haven't read this book, I know it's on the website.
Reclaiming Vatican II, Father Blake Britton. Okay.
Yes. So Andrew read this and he was like, this is amazing. Very balanced down the line approach. You have to read this. And I read it, and every other page I was like, hey, I said that. But but it goes into like what actually happened after the council and why that happened. And then it goes into, so it goes into how people interpreted the council for themselves, and then how there was a reaction to that, and how nobody has actually read the documents of Vatican II in their entirety. And he shows like this is what the true spirit of Vatican II is, and it's not that one that everybody touts. But he just goes into, he does a brief synopsis on all the documents, on the liturgy. You should read it. Don't be scared that Word on Fire publishes it. If you're trad, don't be scared. But I think it is definitely a very, very balanced approach, and it is a very good perspective, I think, that Catholics should have. And then we just got this book, which I'm so excited about because I actually really love this author, and I started it and I made myself stop until I said, I'll finish reading it after we do this, because I was like, I have to prepare for this. But George Weigel's latest book,
To Sanctify the World.
Yes. Ooh. I think this came out last year.
Okay. I have been hearing really good things about that.
He goes into like, the crisis, and yes, there was a crisis. Here's where it started. What Vatican II was trying. It's good.
Awesome. Thank you for those.
Yes. I think I just have a couple more things I want to touch up on. Just a couple takeaways from all of this. Obviously, I do want to talk. I have barely scratched the surface on learning about Vatican II. But I have that's one thing, honestly, that just starting to realize like, oh, I can study the faith and I have resources. I think something, I can say my husband too, we're just very hungry for learning about and just learning about God, learning about the church, learning about the fathers of the church. And there's so much there. I feel like you scratch the surface and there's like a gold mine, and you scratch that surface and there's more, and it's like, which is good because I will take it all.
It's so cool.
But anything, Scott Hahn, Brand Petrie, John Bergsma, George. I actually, the book I'm reading about JP2 is also George Weigel, It's
Witness to
really
Hope.
good.
Yeah, that is like
Yes.
the definitive biography of JP2. Yeah,
It's very, very well
he's not called the Great for nothing. That wasn't just like some wacko's idea, like, let's call him the Great. It's like, no, he was considered, like, the church considered him to be so great.
He
Like,
did so much, and he's so interesting. That's another video we'll do. Yes. But yeah, I just people ask me all the time. I have a friend who says, I don't even know what to think anymore. You know,
think
about
with the church.
there's so much conflicting information coming out now of, you know, the rad trads are all go to Latin Mass, the church is look at, you know, Pope Francis, heresy, all that. And then, you know, there's other people who are like, hey, be wary of it for XYZ. And I think I just said something like, I have so much peace of soul. Like, I never experienced peace of soul like I felt like since just accepting like Vatican II happened. We do have to accept Vatican II, and the Novus Ordo is the right promulgated, and I'll just go to that. Like, just knowing God is with his church and just putting my faith and hope in that. And I can just be Catholic. Like, being simply Catholic is such a freeing thing to do.
Yes.
It's also a lot easier to talk to other Catholics when you're just Catholic. You're not like, well, actually, I go to that other church over there because we're better, because we swipe, you know. It's so easier to just the peace of soul of just being like, nope, this is what God allowed to happen. This is where the church is. This is the liturgy promulgated, and so I will go to it, and that's okay. Wow. And that's a good thing. And it was just realizing like fighting the church is not part of my duty. Growing up, it was always
recognize and resist. Clelia.
Yes. I've stopped resisting. And I've also recognized that, oh man, the way these people talk about the Pope, I think I was like a little shocked. I think it's so hard. Like, I feel like I just try, when people have something negative to say, I just try to say something positive. Like, I don't personally know the Pope.
Yeah.
I can't comment, and I can pray for him, and I can say, I think he does have the best of our interests in mind because he's the vicar of Christ, and the vicar of Christ is not going to work against the church. That's not what he does.
Yeah.
So it's just, yeah, I think before it was like, yeah, when you're fighting the church, your Catholic faith is contingent on the church going back in time and scrapping the last 50, 60 years. Which, like, that's not living out the faith. Like, we don't live in a Christian society anymore. We're post-Christian and turning very, very pagan. And it is the church does have a duty. She does to the responsibility to guide the faithful through those times. And that's what the Pope since the council, and what the council was trying to do was to give guidance to people. And it's when you just throw those out, you're just saying it's no. Like, and I think just when you do that, and so many people do spend so much time criticizing the hierarchy, and which there have always been bad bishops. There have always been questionable things that happen. Yeah. But you're like realizing that my duty of state is here, and it's first my husband and my children, and then it's my parish, and it's obedience to my pastor, and obedience to the bishop of my diocese, and then the Pope. And I don't need to worry about some bishop 3 dioceses over, or even the German bishops, like, huge thing. Like, it's okay. The Pope has addressed it. It's okay. But I think people get so caught up in what's happening that they forget to invest in their communities and to build up their own communities and to take care of their communities. And they spend so much mental energy on other things that it's like, that's not what God's asking of you to do. And I think learning that has been very beneficial.
That's awesome. Yeah. Because that's the key, to not disperse your energy. If you see that, there's crazy stuff going on, you're like, oh, our automatic response should be to like focus close to home and like, what can I do here and now to make it better? Because if everybody did that, it would just spread.
Yes. Like, but if we're all like, you, that's not good. But I think I think learning like, no, my duty is, and the key part is like, obey your bishop. Like, if you think you don't have to obey your bishop, like if you're SSPX or independent and you think you don't have to obey your bishop, like, what is he asking you to do that is sinful? And it's not a sin to go to the Novus Ordo. Like, the church cannot promulgate like a discipline. Like, it's a discipline of the church. You have to obey it. Like, and to say it's a sin to go, like, no.
Right.
And so your bishop is not,
right.
If a bishop takes away your Latin Mass, you cannot be angry with him and just ask God, like, if you need extra graces, help you understand. I don't know. That's between you and God, but like, it's okay. Like, you must obey your bishop. And also, like, what did Jesus mean? If you don't have to obey your bishop, what did Jesus mean when he said, I think it's Luke 10:16, that he who hears you hears me, and he who rejects you rejects me, and he who rejects me rejects the Father who has sent me. Like, that to me, I remember reading that and being like, oh, okay. Like, that's actually like so much bigger. And like, obeying the Pope doesn't mean like not obeying the Pope. Sorry. Like, obeying your bishop doesn't mean I say his name. I mean, it's like, if you're SSPX, they reject the bishop's authority in every single diocese. In the sense of, even if you are, I know some dioceses, they are buddies with the bishop, but they still have no mission. They still have not been incarnated. So in reality, they are operating outside of that. So,
and that was it a motu proprio of St. John Paul II still stands, that formal adherents to the society are automatically excommunicated. That's never been lifted. It's never been changed. So who is a formal adherent? I mean, the clergy.
Yes.
Presumably, at least. And then, people who think you can't go anywhere but to the society and practice that.
Yeah.
That would probably constitute a formal adherence. So then it's like, that's scary. We don't really want to deal with that.
No. They would rather not mess with that. That's one thing, is like, I don't think I can ever go to an SSPX Mass again until Rome says everything is okay. Like, I want to see it in writing with the Pope's signature underneath. Like, I will not go.
You would have to. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I just, between, just the whole, once you understand the concept of communion and understand the Eucharist and the mystical body and the church, those things, you can't go. and it's hard because you can't tell people that either, because they're not open to it.
Right.
And I think it's really hard, because people do have to be open to it for God to let them see it almost.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that's how it worked with me. I had to be like, okay, God, help. So it's just, I think that, and there's so much, it's really sad too, because, just rejecting Vatican II wholesale, like a council of the church should not endanger your faith. If you're afraid of anything that might put the council in a good light, or even like afraid of endangering your faith by reading something that is not approved by your local priest, but is approved by the church, like, what does that say about your faith? For me, I've just been thinking about this. Like, if truth is truth, you can turn your back on it, you can kick it, you can question it, you can just do everything, and it will still remain true. But if your truth, if truth is something where I read a different book and, oh my gosh, it changed, then was that true? So I think that was a big thing for me, was when I realized, like, that one thing wasn't true, what else isn't true? And just finding out, like, there is core truth, it exists, and the church has it. And I think it's ridiculous to throw out a catechism, because it clarifies things better, or I just to reject that I think it's hard to explain that to people as well. When you've grown up with don't question it, there's that trust, that level of trust of they will teach us everything, and they have the true faith, the pure faith. But what does that say also too about one Holy Catholic Apostolic Church? Like, I thought about that during the creed today. Like, I believe in one church. Do you believe in one church, or do you believe in two churches, like parallel church?
Yes, right.
It's funny.
Basically, Lefebvre's interpretation of the church, and that's the only safe one, and the other one is a threat. Now, Holy Mother Church is a threat, and you have to be suspicious of her and what she does. You have to weigh everything, and it's like, oh wow. I mean, yes, you've definitely left the boat at that point.
Yeah. You're just in your little rowboat.
It's a big ocean out there. I don't think I feel good enough about being in a rowboat.
I think Newman has the quote to be deep in history is to cease to be Protestant. I always tell Andrew to be deep in history is to cease to be trad.
It's good. I think it's accurate.
Yeah. But it's once you open the door to like, okay, I can question things, and you're open to the idea of you could be wrong and the church actually might be right. Many of your trad talking points, and this doesn't just go for SSPX, this goes for like TLM parishes everywhere, but your talking points of pastoral council, so we don't have to accept Vatican II or quo primum, all of those are untenable. And I think that was another thing too when we were researching, and we were just like, the answer is in plain sight, but we were just never allowed to look for it. And it's just, there's so many resources out there too. So if you are open-minded, and you're not open-minded, but if you are open to the possibility that the Catholic Church is good, and she might be right and you might be wrong. But
you'll be safe if you're letting God guide you, praying to know His will, and that He's going to take care of you, and He's going to use the church to take care of you. Then it's like that trust is not going to be betrayed. God is going to honor that trust, and He's going to take care of you. Yes,
He's always faithful. I think is it St. Francis de Sales who says the I think it's actually this book.
Oh yes.
Let me cover
Catholic controversy must read for trads, right?
Yes. So it's a response to the Protestant Revolution, Reformation. Sorry, we were traveling. We called it the Revolution. But I think he says to the Protestants, like, how dare you offer, God a younger, more beautiful bride or something to that extent. But in the matter of councils, he has a lot to say just regarding like pastoral, because everybody says reject Vatican II pastoral council. He says the authority of councils ought to be revered as resting on the actions of the Holy Ghost. And if he will not hear the church, let him to be as the heathen and the publican. If you are a trad, read this book. It is good.
I so appreciate your giving your time and how prepared you were. All the books you shared are awesome because people are always looking for resources. And you guys, it's great to see you so eager and really applying yourselves. And, you're getting involved in your parish and formating, yourselves so you can help form others and your kids. You can give them this wide experience of Catholicism, and just sharing where you've been is going to help people. And I really appreciate it. So thank you, Clelia.
This is something that, every time we're studying, I'm like, I want to share this with everybody. And it's really hard because most people who I would share it with would just be like, why did you send that? So I am just my prayer is always like, let them, Holy Spirit, let them be open, let them be open to hearing things. And time. I have to remember, because I'm always like talking about like making parishes better, implementing Vatican II. I'm always like, it's not going to be overnight. It's going to take years. This is for my kids. And then, I forget that, like with people in my life and such.
Oh, I know. God is patient. I am not.
But I do have to remember, like, God brought me out of it for some reason and to where I am now. And there's a purpose. So hopefully I can help other people. So.
Well, thank you so much, Clelia. And then if people want to get in touch with you, should I have them reach out to my email on my channel? And then,
Yes.
So lauravandervos at outlook.com. I can put you in touch with Clelia if you want to connect and, talk with her and share your.
And Laura has an amazing website.
Oh, well, the tradrecovery.com. Yeah, that's for people, on their way out or with family or friends that are stuck in traditionalism, that are, they're seeing there's problems and they want to find resources to understand things, or, a community to support them in their processing and, coming out of that or answering questions. And that's doing really well. And there's, lots of people active on there. And so, come on over and check it out. And we're there. Clelia is there. So yes, it's our home away from home, because we're all kind of spread out across the map. So
yep. One day we'll meet. Yes.
One day. Yes, we will. Yes. Well, thank you again so much, Clelia.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. All right. Well, God bless. And you guys have a wonderful night.
We will. Thank you. Take care.